Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm joined by 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young, as well as the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hursh. I'm Doug Falconer, Agriculture Director at GX94 in Yorkton, and once again, it was a pretty busy week. It started off on Tuesday with the Saskatchewan Beef Industry Conference kicking off in Saskatoon, and Saskatchewan Agriculture Minister David Marit was there for a couple of announcements. The first one being some ADF funding. Did you have a chance to take a look at those numbers, Kevin, and all of the, projects that are being lined up as well?
Yes, wasn't that the announcement, but heard the news on it being announced, and it's quite traditional now for ADF funding for crops to be announced during the crop production show and the meetings that go on there, and then at the beef conference following a week or so later for the ADF projects to be announced at that location. And the one that really stands out is continued funding for VIDO, the Vaccine and Infectious Disease Organization, that believes it's not too far away from getting a vaccine for bovine tuberculosis, which, even if it's not used in this country, used in other countries, could help decrease the incidence of bovine TB and help everyone that's a cattle producer.
Also, we heard the announcement regarding the new implementation of the satellite forage insurance program through the Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Program. That replaces another program that they were saying that really wasn't very effective when a weather station was up to 20 to 30 miles away from you. This is supposed to be down to township size, so that sounds like it's pretty encouraging.
Yeah, and it's something they've worked on for a long time, and the rainfall station, weather-based stations were really a lottery. If you picked the wrong station, or the station didn't represent the rainfall and growing conditions you had, you might be out of luck, or you might have got a payment when you really didn't need one or shouldn't have triggered one. So with satellite technology, with rainfall and other things they can measure by satellite technology, and they've been experimenting with this for quite some time, they seem confident that this will be a more accurate representation of forage growth. So you have to wish them all the best and hope that this is an improvement for the livestock sector.
We also heard out of Saskatoon that from Agriculture Minister David Marit that JBS was going to be shipping some beef to China. I believe that was a story, Ryan, you were following up on.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise. It's funny that it doesn't take long after Canada and China reached their deal to reduce tariffs on each other and opening the border for beef that we're going to start seeing some exports right away. But that was something that David Marit mentioned in his speech from, as I was told by somebody who was at the conference. Didn't really get any official announcement from JBS themselves. I didn't have much success in finding any confirmation online about it, so I reached out to JBS for confirmation, and as of this recording, still waiting on said response. But it is good news nonetheless that the shipment of beef is going to China as early as next week here, not long again after that deal was reached. So good for the Canadian cattle industry, and groups like the Saskatchewan Cattle Association are obviously very happy about that.
Kevin, what was your reaction when you heard that news?
It's amazing how quickly that came about. It was after Mark Carney's visit to China a couple days later that we heard that the market for Canadian beef to go into China had been opened again after being shut for several years due to a case of atypical BSE in Alberta. And to have a shipment that quickly is amazing. Of course, JBS is one of the two big meat processors. JBS is at Brooks, Alberta. The other one's Cargill at High River, Alberta. And interesting markets such as China take many of the cuts that aren't necessarily popular in North America. Offal and liver, maybe tongues, a number of things that they can get better value for in some other markets. So it's all about maximizing the value of the entire carcass And even though they might take some of the top cuts, oftentimes it's the cuts that aren't popular in North America that provides extra value to the carcass when those markets are open. So this is good news. The numbers that were floating around was that before the Chinese ban came into effect, that up to $200 million a year of Canadian beef was going to China. So that is more significant than most of us would have realized.
Okay, so the Saskatchewan Beef Industry Conference ran Tuesday through Thursday in Saskatoon. Also Tuesday through Thursday was Manitoba Ag Days in Brandon, and that's something you checked out, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy Manitoba Ag Days because they have a strong speaker lineup as well as room after room and hall after hall of exhibit space, and some of many of the speakers aren't necessarily cutting edge news, but many interesting thoughts and developments and overall production and management and financial information and some political speakers. So enjoy it very much. The closest thing to announcement was Ron Kostyshin, the Manitoba Agriculture Minister, when he gave opening comments, said that, oh yeah, this is the time when the crop insurance prices for Manitoba will be released. And yeah, they were released. And he talked to Manitoba Agricultural Services Corporation and a day after. And yes, they had the list of crop insurance prices for 2026. And frankly, I was surprised at how many of them were a higher price than I would have expected given market conditions and market outlook. And Saskatchewan's numbers for crop insurance are based on an estimate made about a month after Manitoba's, but usually follow fairly closely. So I had always been of the opinion that our crop insurance coverage levels were going to be down because of dropping coverage levels, dropping price levels. And now I'm not necessarily sure that that's going to be the case, especially when a crop like canola in Manitoba, the crop insurance price is significantly higher than it was last year. So we'll watch for the Saskatchewan prices to come out, probably in 3 or 4 weeks' time.
Also on Tuesday, we heard that Federal Agriculture Minister Heath MacDonald had held a roundtable discussion on the next policy framework, which will be replacing SCAP in 2028. Ryan, you had a chance to follow up on that.
Yeah, it was kind of the first of what will be considered many meetings and consultation across Canada here between now and the end of 2027 to kind of, provide the basis and the foundation for what will become the next policy framework. And as you mentioned, it will replace sustainable cap. That'll kick in 2028, April 1st, 2028, the new agreement, and run until 2033. And this sort of thing kind of happens every 5 years, where a lot of the cattle groups and farm groups across Canada will get together, like the one this past Tuesday with Heath MacDonald, and they'll just lay out all of the priorities that each group has. And the president of the Canadian Cattle Association, Tyler Fulton, was there, for example. And for what he was telling me in the meetings, that it kind of came down to basically 3 main areas that everyone agreed on that was a priority. Basically market access, business risk management programs and improving them. And unfortunately, the third one is not coming to mind, but I'm sure it'll come up at some point in my brain, at some point in this roundtable, or maybe later on in the day. But nonetheless, there was 3 key areas that they agreed on, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Kevin, are you glad to hear they're already starting to work on the new program this far ahead?
I think that's really good news because it takes some time. There have been times between the 5-year programs where things haven't been always worked out, and there's a bit of a lag and a lapse, and people wondering about funding for various programs. So it's nice to see them start earlier this time. And I would bet that the next round will have less emphasis on the sustainability aspect. There was a lot of emphasis in the current agreement on greenhouse gas emissions and measurement and mitigation, and it almost overwhelmed some of the research programming. So I hope to see that toned down a bit to a little more practical stuff. The business risk management thing, everybody always says we want to improve business risk management programs, but I see very few presentations or ideas on the table of exactly how to do that. So it'll be interesting to see as those discussions proceed if they can get agreement and some good ideas on how to actually improve agri-insurance, which is crop insurance, or agri-stability, or whether a program like Agri-Invest stays in place. Some suggest it's not a very useful type of business risk management program, but that's the one that's most popular from a producer's point of view in many cases. So yes, good to see them start discussions well in advance of the current agreement expiring.
Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada earlier this week released their principal field crop report with their predicted seeded acreage for each crop coming up this new crop year. Anything jump out at you there, Kevin?
I think they've got the directions right as far as which is up and which is down. I think you'll see a lot of other market analysts chime in the weeks ahead and say that they think this number is too high or this number is too low. But in general terms, Ag Canada believes cereals will be down. They believe oil seeds will be up, but they've only got canola going up 2%. And some would suggest it'll go up more than that, especially with the most recent agreement with China. But 2% of the canola acres is a lot of acres. Pulse acres are the ones that are predicted to go down quite dramatically, and I think that is the case. Although we can debate what the exact percentages will be.
And speaking of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, it was announced Thursday that they were planning on cutting over 600 jobs nationwide. And then come Friday, we received word that it sounds like the research farm in Indian Head, the research farm at Scott, and even the research farm at Lacombe, Alberta, are all scheduled for closure. Nothing has been made actually official, but it's sure sounding that way. This probably isn't good news for farmers.
No, it's certainly not. A lot of good work happens at those locations. A lot of scientists that work there and support staff may not have an opportunity to move to the larger stations, even if a job is available there, because they're not located where the larger station is. It would be really nice to know exactly what is being cut, what research programs are being reduced, which research farms are being closed. But it seems that information is seeping out in social media and in other sources without a lot of direct confirmation. So as this becomes clearer, hopefully it will be announced and people can assess what's going on. I just think it's really unfortunate because Ag Canada and the research part of Ag Canada, at least, has not been the one that's seeing increased numbers of people over the years, but it's now part of the cuts. I would argue that Ag Canada research has continued to be hollowed out for many, many years now, and then now getting even more significant cuts is not good for the research arm, not good for the future of research and development.
All right, and finally this week, we wanted to talk about the weather. Last week at Crop Production Show in Saskatoon, it was quite mild. The very last day, a storm really blew in, but it really didn't seem to affect attendance too much. But this week at Manitoba Ag Days in Brandon, 3 days of bone-chilling temperatures. Do you think it affected the attendance in Brandon?
Hard to tell. There's just a pile of people at 9 o'clock in the morning just streaming through the doors. The last day on the Thursday, when the temperature had really dropped, and also being the last day of the show, it seemed quite a bit quieter than the first couple of days. But I would think still a very successful event, and people everywhere you looked. But all difficult to know. You could be up or down 1,000 people from previous years, and a casual observer just looking at the traffic in the aisles would be hard pressed to know whether that's the case or not. So it'll be interesting if we get attendance numbers coming out of Ag Days in Manitoba.
Ryan, of course, you live in the Regina area. Has it been not just cold, but windy as well? What's it like there?
Yeah, it's been a little windy here in Regina, but the biggest thing for me is I guess it was last night, Thursday night, it got down to -51 with the wind chills. So crack -50, I think, for the first time this winter season. Kind of felt long overdue. But one of the things I noticed came when driving from work to home, whether I was idling or if I was driving slowly. I noticed the oil temperature gauge on my vehicle. If I was doing one of those two things, the temperature would slowly fall back down. So it was so cold that even the oil temperature can't stay up for very long. But did you notice that, Doug, at all, or how cold has it been in Yorkton?
Yeah, it's been pretty chilly here as well and quite windy, so some fairly severe wind chills here. I think it's supposed to get down to -40 overnight here tonight, which is Friday. Kevin, how was your drive back? I'm assuming you're back from Brandon. You're back in Saskatoon now. What was that trip like?
I left in the daylight, left a little bit early, so we traveling in the daylight. Some of the drifting problems across the road that people had talked about previous days were absent for me. The wind wasn't that high. Darn cold outside, but a clear driving day. So it's amazing any equipment works in temperatures like this. Certainly, cow-calf producers will be hoping that this extreme cold doesn't last too long to keep watering bowls open. Cattle eat a lot more just for the energy requirements this time of year, so it's tough on feed supplies. It's tough on anybody trying to move grain, and will be tough on the railways to move grain. So hopefully this cold snap is really short-lived, because we certainly have a backlog of grain to move. Maybe we have a little bit more market opportunity for it, but we have to move it now. So hopefully this extreme cold snap will be short-lived. Otherwise, it's going to have an effect on how quickly the railways can react.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAg Today, Kevin Hursh, and Ryan Young, the Agri-News Director at 620 CKRM Regina, I'm Doug Falconer from GX94 in Yorkton, saying so long until next time.